try something different with our music corner. How's it going, guys? It's AraDeek here with This Week in AraDeek, my adventure through pop culture. I'm going to feature an album today, Janelle Monae, her third release, Dirty Computer. When I first discovered Janelle Monae, I knew nothing about her other than the fact that the album artwork was amazing, and I figured I'd give it a try. Definitely one of those happier finds when the amazing conceptual story, artwork, and music all coincide to make this awesome product. Her first two albums were complete conceptual albums following the story of a little android called Cindy and her adventures through the metropolis that Janelle Monae created. Now, with her most recent release, she heavily collaborated with the sensational Prince himself. Not only was he a main influence on her throughout this entire album, she would actually send him riffs, send him bits of music, kind of back and forth just to see what he vibed on it and what he thought about it. There's one track in particular where it's very obvious his influence, as well as him gracing her to using a line that he had written previously. You really hear it in the tracks, and it really shines through. It's fantastic. It's kind of a face-melting blend of R&B, pop, funk, neo-soul. It's astounding. And again, the visuals, if they don't give it away for the first, second, and third album, while you're listening to the album, you're going to be looking at these eye-catching visuals. For the first two albums, since they are completely conceptual and following the Cindy android persona, there is a lot more backstory and a lot more kind of sci-fi dystopian world building in it. Since she was so influenced by Prince and his involvement in the album right before his passing, that did cause her to take a step back and pause on the production of the album. Initially, she intended for it to be released in 2017, but with Prince's passing in 2016, it slowed down her process. It made it so she had to reanalyze the album that she was making. I think this added a few more collaborative aspects when we see some of the guest stars on the tracks. And I think it also caused her to shed her Cindy persona and that whole conceptual album persona and instead take a look upon herself. With Prince's passing, she also paused to take key roles in moonlighting as well as hidden figures. I personally didn't know she had the acting chops that she did, but I'm happy she took that time not only to acknowledge the passing of a good friend, but to expand herself into other mediums and to take on roles she probably wouldn't have taken on otherwise. Also, something she said about Prince's passing really resonated with me. Instead of saying that when Prince passed away, she said, when Prince moved on to another frequency. Now, I think that's something we should adopt for any musicians passing, the concept of instead of them going on to this afterlife that we've all envisioned because of outside influences, instead he himself becomes another vibrational frequency in the spectrum of noise, sounds, music, all of that. I think that's a really cool concept and idea, and it kind of ties in the multi-universe idea that I kind of adhere to. The themes of this album are presented much more uncompromised and raw compared to her first two albums, not being afraid to show her true self, her true vulnerability, and her true emotions. Not to say that she was necessarily hiding it with the Cindy android persona, but she was putting on a character and not necessarily showing us her true self, or at least what she saw as her true self. Janelle explained the album to be an homage to women in the spectrum of sexual identities. The 14 tracks off the album can be loosely grouped into 3 categories: reckoning, celebration, and reclamation. First, it deals with Monae's recognition of how she's viewed in society. The middle of the album is her acceptance of the card she's been dealt in this life. And the closing tracks deal with her reclamation and redefinition of American identity. Even though it came out 2 years ago, it feels like this album came out just last week. It's just as politically driven now as it was then, if not more so. All in all, it's gonna make you wanna start grooving, just like a classic Prince album. One track in particular really gives you all those shades of purple. With Janelle Monae's Dirty Computer, she stripped back the metal and circuitry we knew from her first 2 albums, without taking any of the power we know from her as an artist, revealing her own true self to the world. I highly recommend this album. If you haven't heard her already, her first 2 albums are fantastic, but this one shows a new stepping stone for her career as a musician, as an artist, and as a strong female voice of color. If you're watching this, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Keep doing what you're doing, bettering yourself, bettering those around you, and not putting anyone down or hurting anyone. All I can ask of you is to keep it up and keep being awesome. Thanks again, guys. I've been AraDeek.